बोलो श्री कृष्ण कन्हैया लाल की जय, श्री श्री राधा रानी की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय। संसार दावा नलनिधलोका त्राणाय कारुण्य गण गणात्वम् संसार दावा नलनिधलोका त्राणाय कारुण्य गण गणात्वम् प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणनवास्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणनवास्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् महाप्रभु कीर्तन नित्य गीता वदित माध्यान मनसो रसेना रोमांचकंपा शुतरंग भाजो वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीविग्रहाराधन नित्य नाना श्रृंगार तन्मन्दिर जनार्दो युक्तस्य भक्तां च नियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् चतुर्विधा श्री भगवत्प्रसादो स्वदन्न तृप्तां हरिभक्तसङ्गाम् कृत्वेव तृप्तिं भजत सदेवा वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीराधिका माधव्योरपारा माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नाम् प्रतीक्षणा स्वाधनलोलुपास्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् निकुञ्जयो रतिकेलि सिद्धै यायलि वीर्योऽपिरपेक्षणीया तत्रातिदाक्षाततिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् तत्रातिदाक्षा ततिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् साक्षाद्धरित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तस्तथा भाव्यतेव शाब्दिः किन्तु प्रभोर्या प्रियैव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् किन्तु प्रभोर्या प्रियैव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् यस्य प्रसादा भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादा न गति कुतोऽपि यस्य प्रसादा भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादा न गति कुतोऽपि ध्यायन्तु वां तस्य यशस्त्रीसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् ध्यायन्तु वां तस्य यशस्त्रीसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Haraya Namah, Krishna Yadvaya Namaha, Yadvaya Madhavaya Keshvaya Namaha, Hari Haraya Namah, Krishna Yadvaya Namaha, Yadvaya Madhavaya Keshvaya Namaha, Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan, Girdhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Shri Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakta Raghunath, Shri Rupa Sanat, Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe. Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar Radha Shyam Sundar Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Jaya Subhadra Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha. Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Pela dela dadaine. Hiranya Kashi Purvasaha. Silatanka Nakhalai. Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha. Yato yato yami tato Narsimha. Bahir Narsimha Hirade Narsimha. नरसिंहमदिं शरणं पर्पदे नरसिंहमदिं शरणं पर्पदे तव कर कमलवरे नाकम् अद्भुत सिंहा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपुर तनुभृङ्गा केशवधीरता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधीरता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद जयो भक्त प्रहलाद नरसिम्हा भगवान की जय प्रहलाद महाराज की जय गौर प्रमाण दे
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रियासी नमो नमः कृष्ण प्रियासी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो ओ एहि अभिलाषी सेवा पाबो एहि अभिलाषी जे तुम्हार शरण लो तारा वंश पूर्ण हो कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोरा एहि अभिलाष बिलास कुंज दियो वास नयन हरिबो सदा जुगल रूप राशि ए निवेदना धारो सखीर अनुगाता कोरो सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासी कोय इजे नामोर होय श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा जना बासी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा जना बासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रियासी नमो नमः यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ते प्रदक्षिण पादे पादे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मात्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ते प्रदक्षिण पादे पादे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. Jai Vrinda, Jai Vrinda, Jai Vrinda. Jai Jai Ho Vrinda Devi, Jai Ho Vrinda Devi, Jai Ho Vrinda Devi, Jai. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gora Hari Bol.
There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting holy name that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated lives for propagating holy name the Lord. 2. To consider name the demigods like Lord Shiva, Brahma, to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Veda literature or literature pursuant to Vedic version. 5. To consider glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to holy name the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritual activities, offering the Vedas the fruit activities, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of holy name. 10. To know the complete faith in the chanting holy names and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims of Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as trees who can fulfill to everyone, and they are full compassion, fallen, conditioned souls. One. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai, Jeto Darpana Marjanam Pavamahadavakni Nirvapanam, Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam, Anandam Pudivardhanam Pratipadam Purunarmida Sadhanam, Sarvatmasnapadam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, Nam Nam Makali Bahuta Nija Sarva Shaktis, Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranina Kalaha Etadishi Tavakripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudevami Desham Yaha Janina Nurakaha Tulinatapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manatena Kirtanya Sata Harihi Na Thanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Jammani Jamanishware Bhavata Bhaktir Haituki Twai Ai Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Pavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sthitaduri Satesham Chintaya Nayanam Garada Shurudaraya Vadanam Gadgada Rudaya Gira Pulaka Nishtam Vapurkata Tava Nama Grahane Bhavishati Yuga Itam Nimishena Chakshusha Pravisha Itam Shunya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Vidahe Name Ashri Shava Padaratam Pinnashtumam Adarsanam Marmahatam Kurotuva Yatha Tatha Bhavi Tathatu Lampato Mat Prananatas Tusa Eva Naparaha Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki
Jai.
Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all that does accumulate for years, and is stricken fire of conditional life, a repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity, because it spreads the rays and benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone grant all benediction human beings, that you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast roots to chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I am so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the joy in the street. One should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to commit wealth, nor desire beautiful women. Not that I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name, when my voice choke up and when the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name. O Govinda, feeling our separation comes in a moment to be like a great millennium. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord,
unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranama prayers Ki Jai.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshum Litam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakham Vitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatate Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varshabani Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Chala Premadya Shri Rupa Nuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Mutaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pasiddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sashat Vairagya Mutaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Pujayate Namaha. Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanugavarayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumistvam Yudhishta Sajanapriya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha. Vancha Kalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakham Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Pangor Mamamanda Matirgati Masarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madanamo Hano Divya Dvindadana Kaupajumadha Simadra Nagara Singhasanasto Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Pishtari Bhisevamano Smarami Shriman Rasarasarampi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsam Venusmaner Gopir Gopinata Shri Yesuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasani Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarna Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satmasuka Pravisha Lakshavriteshu Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shatasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayatasham Parharvatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chantakala Savanamari Vamsi Ranangadam Panayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Tripangalalitam Nyataprakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmay Rasa Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesha Dulapam Atulapam Atma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Shatavatsara Sampragamyo Vayuratapi Manaso Munipunkavana Sopyasti Yat Prapada Simya Vichintya Tattve Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chetum Jagatanta Kotim Yat Shakti Rasti Jagatanta Jayatanta Antarastam Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Pavitatiyo Manuchasta Teva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yana Puja Suktayam Eva Nikama Patitaistu Vanti Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmay Rasa Patibhavitabi Tabi Eva Nijarupataya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasate Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hidayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundam Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Shukalanya Mena Tishtan Nanavatara Makaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhava Parama Pumam Yo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all, and he has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Okay, you can read. You can read, brother. Go ahead.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with the figure of beauty tinged with hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shamashundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of the transcendental figure possesses in himself the full fledged functions of all the organs and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha, yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men, who are imbued with devotion, sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveniences, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm Goloka, with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidants, Sakis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shamasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrisimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions.
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadasya yato niviyat itaratas charte swavigyaswarat tene brahma hridaya dikavaye muyanti yat suryaha tejo varimidam yata vinimayo yacha trisargo misha damna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and thus, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen in water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of material nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. Dharma projita kaitravo cha parama paramo nirmatsanam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapo trayon mulana. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparir Ishvaraha Sadyo Hridaya Varudyate Chakriti Bihisasus Istakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva, in its maturity is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3 Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhur ahoraska bhuvibhavaka. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic knowledge, of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Bhaskati Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 12, verse number 4. But we're going to read number 3 first, and then we'll go to number 4. There's some points in number 3 that are very important. Dristra papi yasim sristim natmanam bhav amanyata bhagavat dhyana putrena manasanyam tato srijat Dristra, by seeing, papi yasim, sinful, sristim, creation, na, did not, atmanam, unto himself, bahu, much pleasure, amanyata, felt, bhagavat, on the personality of Godhead, dhyana, meditation, putrena, purified by that, manasa, by such a mentality, anyam, another, tata, thereafter, asrajad, created. A translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Okay, you can read? Somebody read?
Seeing such a misleading creation as a sinful task, Brahma did not feel much pleasure in his activity, and therefore he purified himself by meditation on the personality of Godhead. Then he began another term of creation.
Go ahead.
Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.
Although he created the different influences of nescience, Lord Brahma was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task, but he had to do it because most of the conditioned soul wanted it to be so. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15.15 that he is present in everyone's heart and is helping everyone to either remember or forget. The question may be raised why the Lord, who is all merciful, helps one to remember and another to forget. Actually, his mercy is not exhibited in partiality toward one and enmity toward another. The living entity, as part and parcel of the Lord, is partially independent because he partially possesses all the qualities of the Lord. Anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down towards nescience, the all merciful Lord first of all tries to protect him from the trap, but when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. The Lord helps falling living entity glide down to the lowest point, just to give him the chance to see if he is happy by misusing his independence. Almost all the conditioned souls who are rotting in the material world are misusing their independence, and therefore five kinds of nescience are imposed upon them. As an obedient servitor of the Lord, Brahma creates all these as a matter of necessity. But he is not happy in doing so because a devotee of the Lord naturally does not like to see anyone falling down from his real position. Persons who do not care for the path of realization get full facilities from the Lord for executing their proclivities to the fullest extent, and Brahma helps in that procedure without fail.
Okay. So what I wanted to focus on here is this one statement. Actually, his mercy is not exhibited in partiality toward one and enmity toward another. All right, you see that? In other words, Krishna is not, let's say, condemning one person and liberating another person. The living entity has, or every one of us as living entities, we have partial independence. If we misuse the independence, what happens? Well, it says anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down toward nescience, the all-merciful Lord first of all tries to protect him from the trap. But when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. That is extremely profound statements. Krishna is not prejudicial. He doesn't say, oh, I like this person, I don't like that person. Or this person, I'm going to make him suffer, and this person, I'm going to liberate him. He doesn't have that partiality. So it says, actually, his mercy is not exhibited in partiality towards one and enmity towards another. The living entity is part and parcel of the Lord, is partially independent because he partially possesses all the qualities of the Lord. Anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down towards nescience or ignorance, the all-merciful Lord first of all tries to protect him from the trap. But when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. This is something that we should really focus on. Just like there was this one devotee in France. He was, at one point he was very much engaged in devotional service, and he had a nice wife and a nice daughter. But then he got mixed up with another woman, and it got so bad that his wife, left him. And one thing led to another. And eventually, I talked to him. I said, look, why did you do this? You had such a nice wife. You had such a nice daughter. Why do you get mixed up with this other person? He said, oh, yeah. But I like the other person. So he was being very frivolous. But in the meantime, he lost everything. He lost his good wife. He lost the relationship with his daughter. And eventually he lost the lady that he was pursuing. Right? So you see how dangerous it is. And we tried to convince him to break, before his wife left, to break off his relationship with this other woman, but he refused. So this is where it says clearly that anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down toward nescience, the all-merciful Lord, first of all, tries to protect him from the trap. Okay? But when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. The Lord helps the falling living entity glide down to the lowest point, just to give him the chance to see if he is happy by misusing his independence. So obviously he's not going to be happy by misusing his independence because it ruins his life. Okay, so that's one point that I wanted to go over very carefully because it's very important that Krishna does not have, his mercy is not exhibited in partiality towards one and enmity towards another. Okay. Now, before that, there's another very important statement. It says, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15.15 that he is present in everyone's heart and is helping everyone to either remember or forget. Okay, and then it says, actually his mercy is, okay. The question may be raised, why the Lord, who is all merciful, helps one to remember and another to forget? Well, again, whenever you have limited free will, that means you're not a robot. You're not forced to act in a certain way. You have some free will. And if you misuse the free will, there are consequences. And if you use it correctly, there are also consequences, but they're positive consequences rather than negative consequences. So he mentions the Bhagavad Gita verse 15:15. Sarva shichaham hridi sanivisto matak smiti jnanam apahanam cha vedaishcha sarviraham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. 15:15. Let's take a good look at that verse. So who would like to read?
Yeah.
Just read slowly.
Read from the translation.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas.
Okay, so the Vedanta, it's the Vedanta Sutra. Okay. And then the Vedas are the 4 original Vedas and then all the supplementary Vedic literatures. And then there's the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So let's see what it says in the purport.
Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The
Are
living
what? Initiated, right? Go
the
ahead.
living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the supreme personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well.
Okay, so a lot of big statements there. Main thing is that Krishna can give remembrance or forgetfulness. Now, why is that? Well, we discussed this yesterday also. You can't really do anything without the help of Krishna. So if you want to forget Krishna, Krishna has to help you forget him. And if you want to remember Krishna, Krishna has to help you remember him. You see, so everything depends on Krishna. We're not completely independent. We have some partial independence. And that is either to accept Krishna or reject Krishna. So, and then everything is going to depend on our desires. So, to purify our desires, it's necessary to associate with genuine devotees. To contaminate our desires, it's necessary to associate with non-devotees. Krishna is the witness of everything. So he knows what's going on in our mind. He knows what our desires are. He knows what our wishes are, what we're aiming for in life. So therefore, and he says, don't do, no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication, and always chant. And so he's giving all this instruction, but we have the opportunity to refuse it. And when we refuse it, then we become subjected to the 5 types of ignorance, and we suffer unnecessarily. Okay, so the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. Okay, go ahead. Continue.
The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead. Back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra.
Okay, now Vedanta Sutra. Let's discuss that a minute. You have the original 4 Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yaja, and Atharva, right? And then you also have more literatures that are called Vedic or Vedas. And ultimately, you have the Srimad Bhagavatam. So you have the 4 original Vedas, you have the Mahabharata, you have the Vedanta Sutra, and then you have Srimad Bhagavatam. All right, and there are other corollary, so-called Vedic scriptures, but those are the main ones. So, what is the problem here? The problem here is the Mayavadis misinterpret things. So they misinterpreted completely the Vedanta Sutra. In order to correct that, Vyasadeva, who he himself was not really very happy, even after he wrote the Vedanta Sutra, which is very high quality scientific explanation of who God is, but it doesn't really make it clear that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Mayavadis took advantage of that and gave completely wrong interpretation of the Vedanta Sutra. So therefore, Vedavyas wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the natural commentary or a natural explanation of what is the Vedanta Sutra, and it leaves no doubt of who is God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So this is going on many different levels, misinterpretations. So therefore, if you want to know the absolute truth of who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how to serve Him and what is our relationship with the Lord and all these things, you have to read Srimad Bhagavatam, which is what we're doing. Right? And you see all this information in Bhagavatam is very high-class information about who Krishna is, what is the cosmology, the universe, etc., all these things. Okay, so continue. The Vedas offer knowledge. Or the Vedas give the right direction.
I think it's the commentation.
Oh, the commentation, okay.
The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, He is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of His activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas. And as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. He's worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus God is all good. God is all merciful.
So that's very important because here we see everything that's essential in our life depends on Krishna. So that's why he says he supplies, he is the supplier and the digester of foodstuff. In other words, He's supplying the food to us, and He's helping us digest it. Right? He's the witness. He's the witness of the activity of you and me, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. In all these ways, Krishna is serving us and helping us. Right? And then it says, He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus, God is all good. God is all merciful. So now, this is important to learn what's being said here because this shows how much Krishna is helping us to become Krishna conscious and supporting us and doing everything possible to help us come back to Godhead. However, okay, so go ahead. You can read now.
Anta pravishta shashta jananam The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to dictation from the Supreme Lord, situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the
If
Vedic,
one is serious.
if one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity
No,
individually.
why does he present? Yeah.
Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yo so sarver Veder Giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord, and devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him.
Okay, so let's stop right there 1 second. So there are three things. There is the object of knowledge, there is the person trying to learn the knowledge, and there is the process by which you can learn. Okay, so there's Gyayam, Gyata, and there's Jnana. Three things. So that's what's being said here. It says, why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because the living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. In all the Vedic literature, beginning from 4 Vedas, Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads and the Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. That's called the object of knowledge. Okay? The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. So, when it says Krishna is the object of knowledge, then there's the Gyata, there's the person who is trying to understand who Krishna is, and there's Gyayam, the process by which one can understand, Jnana, the process by which we can understand. So there's Gyayam, Gyata, and Jnana. Now, if we go to the internet, look up object of knowledge. Did you look up object of knowledge?
It says the object of knowledge involves the consciousness of the distinction between the idea of an object and the object that warrants.
Okay. So, go ahead, read a little bit more.
Object. So this is Plato's object of knowledge. Plato has assumed from the outset that knowledge is attainable and that knowledge must be infallible and of the real. True knowledge must possess both these characteristics, and any state of mind that cannot vindicate its claim to both these characteristics cannot be true knowledge.
Okay, so this is like uh, gobbledygook. If you know what that is, gobbledygook. More or less like nonsense. The real object of knowledge, or Gyayam, is Krishna. He's the source of everything. Now you don't. Now, when you go to, you learn philosophy in school, they're going to teach you what you just read. You understand? Whereas it's important to understand this Gyayam, Gyata, and Jnanam. The object of knowledge is Krishna. The person trying to know is the living entity, Gyata. And the process of how to know is called Jnana. Now, you're not going to get that in the dictionary definition of the object, knowledge, etc. This is a major problem because people get misled. Plato himself was misled. He's not a perfect Vaishnava. So they make up all these different types of philosophical ideas, but it doesn't explain the real truth. The real truth is that Krishna is the object of all knowledge. All knowledge is coming from him. And as it says here, that everything that is essential to our life is dependent on Krishna. So therefore it says that why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. See, he's the object of all knowledge. Vedic literature confirms this. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and the Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he, meaning Krishna, is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, meaning Krishna. And then Vedanta Sutra confirms this 1.1.4. So here we see how much we can be misled by modern philosophy. They're talking about Plato, and Plato gives some kind of an explanation of what is the object of knowledge. It has nothing to do with Krishna. So you can see all these young kids, they're studying philosophy, but actually they're not learning philosophy. They're learning things that avoid what is the ultimate goal of knowledge. These are practical examples. We need to understand that many times, and I've said this before, the dictionary definitions can be misleading or flat out wrong. Okay, so go ahead. So there are three things. There's Gyayam, Gyata, and Jnana. Gyayam means the object of knowledge, that's Krishna. Gyata means the person trying to learn, that's you and me. And Jnana means the process of how to understand. Go ahead.
Vedanta Sutra 1.1.4 confirms this in the following words. Tattu samanvayat One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him. And at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined.
So the purpose of the Vedas, that's the object of knowledge. That's to understand Krishna. The understanding of the Vedas, that is how you can understand, that's jnanam. And the goal of the Vedas is to become Krishna conscious, right? And know your relationship with Krishna. Okay, so therefore, in this verse, Sarva Shichaham Hridi Sanivisto Gyat, and so forth, Matak Smritir Jnanam Apahanam Cha, Vedaishta Sarvirham Eva Veda, Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. All right, so when he says I'm the compiler of the Vedanta, yeah, in his incarnation as Vyasadeva, he wrote the Vedanta Sutra. Okay. And he says, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Yeah, because nobody else knows the Vedas. The Mayavadis don't know the Vedas. They make up their own whimsical speculations about it. The modern scientists don't understand the Vedas. Only Krishna does. And he's the compiler of the Vedanta in his incarnation as Vyasadeva. And the whole purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. Okay. So now we see how confused Vedic philosophy has become because of the Mayavadis and because of all their speculations. They basically have speculated so much that you don't understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They just talk about the Brahman. But even their understanding of Brahman is wrong. So no wonder there's so much confusion in India and around the world. Okay, so we had already read this verse, but I wanted to go over many of these points, especially the point that anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down towards nescience or ignorance, the all-merciful Lord first of all tries to protect him from the trap. But when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. This is very important information. Okay, then in what way is the Lord, first of all, tries to protect him from the trap? Well, he's written the Bhagavad Gita, and his devotees have written the Srimad Bhagavatam. So basically, he's done everything to help us avoid falling down. But if we insist on it, and we ignore Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then he says, okay, well, that's what you want. That's what you're going to get. So we can't do anything without the help of Krishna. even falling down, even forgetting Krishna, we need Krishna's help. So this is an all-encompassing philosophical presentation of the truth. Why people fall down, how they can be saved, what is the purpose of life. All these questions are being answered here. And if we pay attention, we will avoid a lot of misery in life. Paying attention is very important. And therefore, we're reading things very slowly and trying to understand. In the end, it says, persons who do not care for the path of realization get full facilities from the Lord for executing their proclivities to the fullest extent, and Brahma helps in that procedure without fail. In other words, if you really want to ruin your life and you insist on it by developing all these bad habits, then Krishna will help you go all the way. And Brahma helps also. That's something we should definitely not let happen to us. We should never and ever even slip a little bit, because it just creates a lot of misery in our life. Okay, so are there any questions?
Maharaj,
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, can you elaborate more on the self-deception, how we self-deceive us?
What you're asking the question, how do we self-deceive? Yeah. Well, it's not complicated. When you become convinced that you are the body and you ignore the fact that you have an eternal soul, that's the origin of the self-deception. It's just like if you say, I am a Telangana, and the Telanganas, they do things in this way, and we don't like the Andhras because they do things in another way. Well, that false identification with the body leads to all kinds of complications, and none of it is true. It's all false. So self-deception happens when you identify with something that you're not, and you actually believe it, and you act on it. So then you're in a delusional state of mind, and you're making big mistakes over and over again. Just like this person I talked about, he had a very nice wife, a very nice child, and he was a devotee initiated by Prabhupada, and he got mixed up with this woman, another woman, and it ruined his whole life. And nobody was able to convince him. I mean, I talked to him for hours because he was a good friend of mine. That, don't do this. This is a big mistake. Stop right away. Go and apologize to your wife. Break off your relationship with this other woman. He didn't listen. It ruined his whole life. That's self-deception. You begin to believe something that's not true, and then you act on it. Now you're in a state of self-deception. This happens a lot, all the time. And the beginning is identifying with the body instead of with the soul, and being completely ignorant of what the soul is. Do a little bit of experiment. Go around and ask people that you know, do you believe that you have an eternal soul? What do you think that they would answer? Huh? Well, even if they say, yeah, I believe it, but they don't act as if they believe it, Okay, so now let's go on to text 4. Real
Maharaj,
quick.
one clarification on this, the self-deceive.
What?
So, follow up on the self-deceive.
Yeah.
So the beginning to fall under this trap is believing we are the body, not the soul. So then, now we are, at least me, I mean, if somebody says who is Naresh, then I can quickly think of this body. So that means we are already under the influence of these 4 sciences. Is that correct?
Well, no. If you say I'm the body, I can ask you which body. You have had many bodies in this lifetime, right? And your body is still changing. So which body are you? The one when you were 6, 16, 36? You see, you cannot say I'm this body. You're changing it all the time.
Yeah. The problem is, Maharaj, we associate with the changing body as well.
What?
When like now, when you're in 40s, we associate with the body that is in 40s. We don't associate with the body in 10 or 20 or 30. So that is a trap that we are going through.
That's part of self-deception,
Yes.
right? So if you analyze something, just like the devotees have this presentation of all the different bodies. You know, you begin with a little baby, and it goes all the way till you're falling down, you're dying, right? Now, when you look at that, do you take it seriously? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But someone who takes it seriously, then they can understand. Look, I can't say I am this body. Look at all the bodies I've had in my life. You see? So, why did the devotees go through all this trouble to present these things? So to make people think more seriously about who am I exactly? Am I this body or am I a soul? Now the soul never changes, by the way. It never changes. You have an eternal body, spiritual body, that's never changing.
Yes.
And you have a material body that's always changing. So which body are you?
So Maharaj, so we are conceptually aligned to the
To the
instruction, but in experience-wise, we are still in self-deception. How do we overcome this?
associate with devotees, with real devotees. Hear this knowledge on a regular basis. And do the homework. Think about these things. These are serious questions in life. Who am I exactly? What is my real position? Right? I'm born, I grow, I stay, I give off byproducts in the form of children, I begin to dwindle, and then I die. So then you have a body, but you're gonna lose it. That's the material body. But your spiritual body, you never can lose it because it's eternal. So which body are you? You decide.
And Maharaj, when we are in that mode, don't we forget family?
What?
If we are in that mode,
What mode?
mood means
I am this body.
forgetting this body.
Yeah.
So don't we forget the family also, because the family is associated to the body.
Well, okay. Look, every one of us is going to get old, get sick, and die. Okay. Not only you, your family members also, and you're seeing it all the time. Family members die, right? So you have to think, who am I exactly? Am I this body, or do I have an eternal soul? Do I have a relationship with Krishna or no relationship with Krishna? who is Krishna? Is he the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or is he some kind of a Mickey Mouse or a Donald Duck or something like that, right? You have to ask these questions, and once you settle the questions, then you follow. So if you say, look, I'm not this material body, I'm eternal soul, therefore I should act like an eternal soul by being always engaged in Krishna consciousness. If you think, oh no, I'm just this body, and when I die, everything is over, so therefore let me just eat, sleep, mate, and defend as much as I can, and then when I die, it's all over, I don't have to worry about anything. So you have to decide you have to make all these decisions in your life. And what is it all about? It's understand who you really are. If you end up believing that you're something that you're not, that's called self-deception. You're gonna miss the whole purpose of human life, which is to go back to Godhead. So these are serious questions. Is there a spiritual world? The Mayavadis say, no, there's not. There's just Brahman. That's the only thing. So many people are saying so many things. You open up the dictionary and it gives you a definition of object of knowledge that it's hard to understand because but you read the object of knowledge in Bhagavatam. It says the object of all knowledge is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The origin of everything. So on one side, it's all confusion. On the other side, it's very simple and straightforward. So you have to decide. No one can force you. You have to actually decide. But if you continue to hear properly and you continue to engage in service, eventually you'll say, no, this is the truth. I'm not going to deviate from this. Now, maybe your family will accept or not accept. That's another issue. And they're going to see, look, he's become Krishna conscious. Has he become a better person, or has he become, let's say, judgmental, mean, and making fun of us or looking down at us, So unless you become more humble and more self-controlled and more merciful and compassionate, your Krishna consciousness is not going to work. So you become not only knowledgeable, but a better person by accepting the truth that you have an eternal soul and that the real goal of life is go back to Godhead, and that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He gives you food, he helps you digest it, he gives you knowledge, he helps you understand it. He's giving you everything, right? And because you appreciate it, you become very faithful to the Lord, and you serve him with love and devotion. And then your whole life becomes like a magical, wonderful life. You're no longer in anxiety, no longer fearful, no longer doubtful. So you have to decide. No one else can force you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I can confidently say that I'm under the influence of self-deception now. But
well, I don't really think so. I think that you wouldn't be coming to the classes if you were completely in self-deception. Okay. Believe me, you would not be coming to the classes.
Okay.
Haribol.
Thank you, Haribol Maharaj.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Then we'll stop there. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And thank you, Samart. Haribol.
While you set it up and see if it works. Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bandhu Mui Savadhana Mate
Mando Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhava Doriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai He Bhavato Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoye
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Aikya
Shri Guru Charana Padma Devande Koriya Aikya
Arna Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Sri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati. Thank you.
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
He Prasade Pure Sarva Asa.
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
He Prasade Pure Sarva Asa.
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
ओ चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेमा भक्ति जहाँ होय दे अविद्या विनाशा जाते प्रेमा भक्ति जहाँ होय दे अविद्या विनाशा जाते वेदे गाय जहाँ राजारी दो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु ओ श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
ओ लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
आहा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादा छाया
प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पादा छाया
आहा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादा छाया
प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पादा छाया
ये बेजास गुसुक त्रिभुवाना ओ ये बेजास गुसुक त्रिभुवाना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
Jaya Guru Deva Guru Deva Jaya Guru Jaya Guru Deva
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvesesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Desatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Sri Advaita Gadadhar
Gadadhar
Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya
Shri
Shri
Krishna Chaitanya Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda,
Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhar
Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Kiji. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Kiji. Sri Radha Krishna Govardhana Sankund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Sri Vrindavan Dhan Kiji. Sri Mayapuri Dhan Kiji. Jagannath Puri Dhan Kiji. So Vasudevi Kiji. Nitai Gaura Premanand. All glories to Sambuddha. All glories to Sambuddha. All glories to Sambuddha Buddhas. Glories to Shikuru and Shikaranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana Ki Jai.
I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment, his lotus is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of the mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila
Srila
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go to Premanandi. So, we have some homework if you want to do it. That is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1.1.7. 1.1.7. So it says, Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentation on the Brahma Sutra, or Brahma Sutra means the Vedanta Sutra, or the Badarayani Vedanta Sutras. It is called natural because Vyasadeva is author of both Vedanta Sutras and Srimad Bhagavatam, or the essence of all Vedic literatures. So you see, when in the Vedanta Sutra it says, the first aphorism is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now let us inquire about what is the supreme absolute truth. Well, Vyasadeva begins the Srimad Bhagavatam with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. That answers the question of the first sutra of the Vedanta Sutra, which is, now let us inquire about what is the supreme absolute truth. The supreme absolute truth is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, that Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. So we see that the real commentary, not the Mayavad commentary of Vedanta Sutra, but the real commentary of Vedanta Sutra is Srimad Bhagavatam. So read this 1.1.7, and if you want to go further, you look up the natural commentary of Vedanta Sutra is Srimad Bhagavatam in Vani quotes, and then you're going to see a whole bunch of references explaining this. This is very important because the Mayavadis have confused things so much, and here Prabhupada goes to great extent to explain what is the real truth about Srimad Bhagavatam and Vedanta Sutra. They have so misrepresented Vedanta Sutra that it was necessary to write the Srimad Bhagavatam to correct it, so there won't be any misconception. Okay?